Hi there. Let me start with why I'm convinced that Trump will win this November. Think about 2016, November 2016. I read Paul Krugman in the New York Times that said if Trump gets elected, the stock market will go down, 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 like bottomless, deep dive. The afternoon of the election, I had a little cry, because I thought, well, he's not going to win. Okay, I put all this effort in for nothing, or whatever. I accepted that he wasn't going to win. And many, many people thought he wasn't going to win. So all the Trump haters out there, but there were also a lot of people who weren't certain about Trump, and so didn't vote for him. They kind of didn't like his style. They thought he was too scary for them, for whatever reason. So, who's going to vote for Trump this time? There are many, many people who have changed their mind. I don't really see a lot of people who have changed their mind in the other direction. Of course, the mainstream media and the Democrats try to make a big deal of the few rhinos who say they're going to vote for Biden. But in terms of regular people, there's been this whole walkaway movement. There's a lot of people who didn't support Trump in 2016 who are going to support him this time. And I don't see a walkaway movement of people going from Republican to Democrat. I just don't see it. So he's going to win bigger. And then you have people who are afraid to say that they're for our president. So you really got people on the left suddenly thinking, wow, he might win, especially after this past week's Republican National Convention. Now, I hope some of you caught this or watched it. I pretty much watched everything and some things more than once because it was inspiring. It was such a good reminder. It was empowering. It was stories of empowerment. I mean, just take one example. There was Madison, what's his name? Crawley? Anyway, he was a guy in a wheelchair, 25 years old, and he's running for Congress. And he talked about how he overcame his struggles, and now he's excited. So there's all these stories of personal, of empowerment, of success. So that was great, and it made you proud of America. I loved it. It was upbeat. It was all the things I believe. I loved listening to it. And it was a very amazing reminder of all the things that Trump and his administration have accomplished. Huge numbers of things. Huge numbers of things. Even opioid deaths have gone down. I don't need to list it all. You all can hear it, but I just sort of had forgotten about it because everybody's talking about COVID, everybody's talking about riots. So you can kind of forget about it. But then you had people whose policies, regular Americans, workers, people with businesses, people from all walks of life, who talked directly to the camera in short segments, short inspiring segments, about how these Trump policies had changed their life. And it just painted a completely different picture of President Trump because he would listen, he'd try to solve the problems. This is the most amazing, as someone who's followed presidential politics and read zillions of I've read pretty much every biography of the presidents that's out there. And there's just no other president that's accomplished this much of good. But of course the left doesn't want to see that. But anyway, and one other, I recommend you watch Patricia Dixon's video of her, most recent video of her impressions of the RNC, because I don't need to repeat what she said and what others have said, but I think she said it, at least what I believe, best of all, about how inspiring it was. It made you really feel good about this country. But it really made me feel good about the Trump administration. Because let me tell you, that's not a good expression. Let me say one thing about if Biden were elected. I mean, there's so many problems with Biden. I mean, so many problems. He's a kind of a creepy pervert. That's one, a big one. But his dementia, everything else. But what you would have if Biden were elected is chaos. And when there's chaos, there's people grabbing for power. So you don't really know what you would get in the way of policies. Well, we kind of know. I mean, clearly very, what they call progressive policies. So many ruinous policies, but I'm also thinking, who would have the power? I've been trying to figure out Jill Biden, his wife, because how she could encourage her husband to run for president is really perplexing to me, because he clearly has cognitive decline. And why would she do that? But remember, she could run things behind the scenes. Now, if you were just for school choice, just that one issue, why would you want Joe Biden as president? School choice is out the window. I mean, they talked about getting rid of charter schools. Very much teachers' unions would take over. That's what Jill Biden wants. So I suspect that she would be running a lot of things, but then you would have the Kamala Harris camp trying to run things. But she's vice president, so she's not next to Joe. I mean, right there at the White House, he could be taking this stuff to sign or executive orders, and Jill Biden could say, sign this, do this. So there would be all these people grabbing for power because nobody would be in charge. I mean, how would you get things done? I'm really, he's not going to win. The American people are not that foolish. Now, the people who have severe Trump derangement syndrome, well, maybe so. They clearly will vote for him, but I just don't think most Americans go that far. They may not like Trump for various reasons, but at least he has now a record of accomplishment, and that cannot be denied. Another thing I liked about the Republican National Convention is first of all, what an amazing production. But I also liked that I didn't see a lot of masks. Mask, I hate the mask. And of course, the left is trying to make a big deal out of it, although you have all of these rioters and people out bothering people, and some of them have masks because they want to keep the liberals on their side. So it's like a weird virtue signaling, you're breaking stuff down, but you got a mask. It's crazy. But I liked what Alex Berenson, he's really been following the COVID numbers. He's a former New York Times reporter, but of course New York Times has gotten rid of all the really, really good reporters that they used to have. But he was on Laura Ingraham last night, and he just said it's ridiculous. He said, I'm just so, don't they even look at the data? It's not spread outdoors. It's spread indoors, the COVID-19. It's not a problem when you're outdoors. Because they say, look at the people, they all didn't have masks on. Well, good. Remember, on July 3rd, they didn't have masks on either. And that was in South Dakota, with Kristi Noem. Remember when they were at Mount Rushmore? People didn't have masks. There's going to be a big... No, people didn't get it. They don't get it outside. So people who wear masks outside are just... I'm sorry, it's so insane. We have a lot of people who wear masks outside here in this area. It's hard to deal with for me. It really is. I just... are people really that... easy to control? Anyway, They want to keep the fear up. That's very important, because this idea, oh, and here's another thing. What is the Democratic Party standing for? So I'm on all these lists, so I let myself just receive all the lists. So there are all these fundraising pleas, and I look at them just to see what they're doing, and they're all about Trump being bad. They're nothing about their own program, okay? So I got this one from Senator Jeannie Shaheen, and she's from New Hampshire. What Trump just said in New Hampshire. Donald Trump just walked off the stage in New Hampshire, his first campaign rally after the Republican National Convention. This was his third campaign rally in New Hampshire this cycle. Why? Because he knows Democrats have almost no chance of taking back the Senate majority if we lose in New Hampshire. So he's laser focused on flipping this Senate seat red. Okay, so they're asking for money. Please send a $10 donation. If Democrats want to win back the Senate majority this November, it is critical to win in New Hampshire, and Donald Trump knows this. That's why he flew all the way to my home state for his first MAGA rally after officially accepting the Republican nomination. And in the middle of the worst public health crisis we've ever faced in over a century, no less. He spewed the same lies that we've heard earlier this week, refusing to take responsibility for any of the challenges we're facing. I mean, like, what planet do these Democrats live on? What do you mean, refusing to take responsibility for any of the challenges we're facing? What does that even mean? Do you even know what he's done? The things he's accomplished? It's just like, okay, but they just repeat this over and over again. Because that's the kind of leader he is, one who's eager to pass the blame. What? Because he's not saying he's responsible for COVID-19? He's saying China is? And is only interested in serving himself. Only interested in serving himself. I actually think this is the one president that is the least interested in serving himself. He really cares about this country. And if you can't see it, I mean, I think I'm a good judge of character, and all of you are too. You just watch him. He really cares about this country. And he cares about all Americans. So, they just keep saying these lies over and over again. Let's talk about the riots, BLM and Antifa. Oh, no, let me tell you one more thing. I just listened to Trump this morning when he was in Louisiana. And some reporter at the end of his talking in Louisiana asked about climate change and hurricanes. I thought, I wonder how he's going to answer that. Because that's a thing that these ignorant people think. It's like, oh, we never had hurricanes. Climate change is hurricanes. First of all, let me just repeat something very simple. It doesn't really matter what you do. I mean, even if you believe that carbon dioxide drove everything in the climate, which it doesn't. It so doesn't. Okay, but let's say you believe that. So you think that if we screw up our economy, we cut our carbon emissions, that it's going to make a difference? And you, what about China? What about India? Why would you unilaterally screw up your own country and give China a pass? And let me tell you, we did give China a pass, even in the Paris Climate Accord, because China and India were listed as developing countries. They didn't have to do anything until 2030. Well, la-di-da, how stupid is that, okay? So they never addressed that. But the thought that, oh, you know, all of this would go away, we'd have some kind of perfect weather. What are you talking about? Do you know anything about history? By the way, the perfect channel for this is Tony Heller, because I love it. He shows headlines from, you know, late 1800s, from the early 1900s, all these things going on, and what happened in the past, and also what so-called scientists, everybody said, and what the consensus was, what was happening. And you could read the headlines. I love that, okay? So Tony Heller documents this so beautifully. and in a humorous way. So I encourage you to go to his channel for that. So what did Trump say? I loved it. He just said, well, there's been a lot of hurricanes and flooding in Louisiana and Texas in the past. Thank you very much, people. And then he left. Perfect answer, perfect answer. He didn't even get into it. Oh, I love President Trump. Okay, let's talk about BLM, Antifa, and all this, because as many of you have seen with the rioting, these people are pretty disgusting. They get in your face, they harass people, and they're scary, okay? And in the Democratic Party and in other places, I mean, this is really hurting Trump politically. I mean, hurting the Democrats politically and very much helping Trump. Because law and order is something people want law and order. So you ask yourself, where is this coming from? I mean, I look at it, the BLM crowd. I mean, who's funding these people? I mean, I know it's George Soros and some others, but I'm hoping in the second term that we can really start looking at they're terrorist organizations. But it's more than that. It's more than that. There's all kinds of weird stuff going on in our universities. Let me just give you one thing. Talk about a deep state. This is at Sandia Labs. So I tweeted about this because there's one guy, I think Christopher Rufo, he's really investigating it. So all the males at Sandia Labs, the white males, have to take a thing called critical race theory. So think about that. They call it critical race theory. And why do they call it that? Critical, in scientific terms, means analytic, okay? It's like a science thing. It's analytic, very precise. And theory also makes it like it's scientific. You have a scientific theory. It's none of that. It's all BS, okay? But they're forcing this on people. It's like an indoctrination camp. I'm listening to the story of the young woman from North Korea and the indoctrination camps you have to. That's what it is. It's like a re-education indoctrination class. And that's what these people are doing. And it's in the federal government. It's being paid for by the taxpayers, by us. Okay, we got to root all this stuff out. Maybe have a executive order from the president. We got to stop this, okay? Now, one of the lists that I've been on, and I just like shake my head whenever I get it, but I'm always sort of curious as to what they're up. So there's a thing called the Women's March Action Campaign Manager. So listen to what they're saying, okay? Because they're called People, Politics, and Drinks, Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So they have these Zoom conferences. Deborah, protests have been occurring across the country nonstop since George Floyd was murdered. Louisville has been marching consistently for Breonna Taylor, although many major news networks have lost interest in covering it. Nightly protests in Portland, Oregon passed their 90th day this week. Nightly protests. Like, wow, this is great stuff. And of course, no mention about the burning down of the buildings and the rioting and the looting. Okay, the Portland Police Bureau declared 23 riots and 22 unlawful assemblies, but the laws governing those declarations are vague and have roots in Oregon's deeply racist past. Oh, yeah? Portland had been viewed as a test case for the use of federal force, but the situation there is unique in many ways. Joining us for next week's People, Politics, and Drinks is someone who's not only an expert on fascist regimes and how they operate, but someone who has been on the Portland streets himself to give us a primer on what we need to know. Don't miss Alexander Reed Ross, professor of Political Ecology and Resilience at Portland State University. Portland State University, which means Portland, the state of Oregon is helping to pay for this. Currently, he researches and teaches political ecology and resilience and is a doctoral fellow at the Center for the Analysis of the Radical Right. Oh, isn't that sweet? He's checking us out. I mean, can you imagine if somebody was a professor at a state university tracking the radical left? This wouldn't happen, folks. It wouldn't happen. Because they're all leftists. But, oh, you got to study the radical right because we're fascists. His work on the far right uses spatial and network analysis. Oh, isn't that smart? Spatial and network analysis, computer stuff, to track fascist movement building and associated disinformation campaign. Oh my God, these people. Why are we allowing professors like that? No wonder these kids come out and spout this incredible nonsense coming out of their mouth. They go to these colleges and they're radicalized. This is disgusting. The author of Against the Fascist Creep in 2017, Dr. Ross's articles have been published in various scholarly and lay publications, such as the Oregon Historical Quarterly, the Independent, and Bellingcat, and he's provided commentary for newspapers and magazines like The Guardian, The Atlantic, and the LA Times. So these people, that's where they're getting this information. Don't miss the vital conversation with Dr. Alex Reed Ross. Understanding the right, that's us, and other fascist movements around the world is critical to getting the U.S. back on course and protecting our democracy. Wow. In order to combat Trump and ensure we don't fall under the sway of the next corrupt right-wing demagogue, we have to understand the movement and ideology that gave rise to Trump in the first place. Okay, I have to admit, it's hard for me to read this stuff, but we've got to understand what's going on. We got to get these people out of these schools, or just not go to these schools. We got to quit funding it. We got to quit allowing it, because they're training the next generation. This is really bad stuff. I just, because I watched a lot of the RNC on C-SPAN. I didn't watch it on Fox, and I'll get to that in a minute. I mean, they kept breaking it up with commentary. But at least with C-SPAN, you could see it straight on. Although I actually liked OAN, One American News. They also did it straight. So when I just turned on the TV, it came up with C-SPAN. And it was an interview from the Washington Journal. And it was associate professor of history at Ohio State University. Again, State University. And I just caught this little clip. His name is Hassan Kwame Jeffries, and he was talking about the March on Washington. And I don't know if you heard any of the speakers are pretty bad. I mean, this is supposed to commemorate Martin Luther King. It's just, this is not Martin Luther King. This is disgusting. But he said, it's important to, he literally says this, okay? He's a professor, an associate professor at Ohio State University. So he is teaching the kids, teaching them this. Why are we allowing this? We have to wake up, people. That's where these crazy people come from. He used the words, we need to fully defund police and to reimagine what policing in America looks like. Okay? So we have to think about the colleges, and we also have to think about local elections, because there are some really bad DAs, district attorneys, and I've been reading about that. Oh man, be glad I'm reading this if you're not reading it. But we have to look very, very carefully on the ballot. You have to look at who are these people, because sometimes you just vote and you don't really think about it. You got to know who these people are. Okay? So there's and they're Soros funded. And unfortunately, they're all black women in this case. But you also have one that's coming up in Los Angeles. And he's backed by Gavin Newsom. They basically don't want to prosecute anybody. And they're even saying, well, we have to think about whether we want to prosecute looters that steal, break in, because, they're protesting. But this is Diane Becton, in her first term as elected district attorney, is one of a number of district attorneys heavily supported by lefty billionaire George Soros. What's going on with George Soros? Okay? I mean, we need to look at these financial networks. Who's funding all of this? I mean, where are all these writers getting this funding and funding these campaigns? This is really, this is war, people. This is war. We normal people, we're normal people. We normal people can't just afford to sit back. And I'm convinced that there's a large number of Democrats who don't really understand what's going on. So they kind of just think this is okay because they're not really paying attention. Because if you just look at the regular news sources, oh my God, it's filtered. You don't see what the rest of us see. But there are people waking up. So we've got to look, and we've got to get these people out of office. This is just horrific. I have a hard time reading some of this stuff. I mean, I'm thinking about when George Bush was president. I kind of didn't pay that much attention to politics because I didn't like the Iraq War. I thought that was bad. I didn't like the response to Katrina, although now I'm not really sure because I'm getting that from the mainstream media. Maybe it wasn't so bad. But I guess I believe that it was bad because of what I was hearing at the time. But I basically kind of stayed out of politics because I thought I'm not supporting the Bush administration. But we can't do that now. We have to stay involved. Because these people, I don't mean to get people paranoid. Because one of the things I'm noticing is that a lot of stuff is changing fast right now because of the lockdowns and the riots and all this stuff. There's so many different things changing that it's a little bit, and people wearing masks. Oh my God, that's just changing our whole society. I think it's very important that we keep our heads, but we fight back. But it is nice. We're gonna win this, but it's not just this. We really have to look at all these institutions. We haven't been paying attention. And I know some of you have mentioned that, like some of your younger people going to college, they tend to be very liberal. Well, that happened also. I mean, a lot of people were liberal, even in 1972 when I voted. And there you had the Vietnam War. I mean, there's a legitimate thing to be against. But George McGovern still lost a lot. And I listened to the 1980 debate between President Carter, because you can get all this stuff online, it's pretty cool, and President Reagan. And it was interesting listening to it because there was a lot of problems with energy. I remembered living through that time. And I remember watching that debate with my friend Pamela, my roommate and friend Pamela. Hi, Pamela. But things are a lot better now. I mean, we have energy independence. Do people realize how great that is? We're not dependent on other countries. And yet, and yet we want to shoot ourselves in the foot. We want to take it away. It is for an insane thing. Wow. Okay. Here was another thing. And I think most people just hate this. When you see these videos of like BLM harassing people in restaurants. So there was this one scene, and maybe you saw it, where there was this woman, she has her mask on, she's in a Washington, D.C. restaurant. And these people are just like in her face, like raise your fist, raise your fist. So this was tweeted a lot because they were saying, she didn't do it. Because a lot of people were like, just raise your fist, and because white silence is violence or something, they were saying. But they were like in her face at the restaurant. So they were talking about this on the 5. And I really like Dana Perino. Because Jesse Waters, he's usually pretty good, but he just said, he kind of made light of it like, well, it depends on where I was in the meal, because the question was, would you raise your hand just to get these people out of your face? And he said, well, it depends on where I was. Like if I was at the dessert and I just wanted to be left alone, I might go like that. I think he thought he was being funny, but I saw his face, because when Dana Perino gave her answer, he realized he blew it. Dana Perino, okay, she's pretty mild, I guess you could say. She's not that big of a fighter, at least I don't see her that way. She said, oh no, if they did that to me, I would, first of all, I'd get up on the chair so I'm taller than them, and I would just start lecturing on them. You can't do that. And also, don't get close to people. We have a virus going around. Where's your social distancing? But she would have yelled back at them. She would have fought back. Because I thought I absolutely would have. I wouldn't have just, because everybody thought that woman was brave because she didn't raise her hand. I would have done more than that. I would have gotten right back in their face. Now, then it got me thinking. So anyway, I love Dana Perino for that. What do I do in a situation like that? Now, if you're outside and you're in a mob, you don't argue with the mob. Because I always check out the safety issue. I don't care about the social issue. I don't think I care about the social issue. I don't mind thugs like that not liking me, but I do evaluate the safety. So I would think, well, I got to walk out to my car after this. Are they going to follow me to my car if I get in their face right now? So I would make sure that I had a plan regarding that. But these were just mostly like white liberal kids that have been brainwashed by this other stuff. Okay, I don't think they would physically attack you. They were just idiots in your face. So, they're just a bunch of punk kids. So I would have definitely got in their face. Got in their faces, you little mouse, indoctrination, communist, whatever. So always evaluate the safety, but we need to stand up to this. Let me mention something about Fox News. Fox News is changing. Now, I still like Tucker Carlson, I still like Laura Ingraham. But the Murdoch kids that are running things, they're changing it. And a lot of you have noticed. So a lot of people on Twitter were very upset. Like, what's wrong with Fox News? Why do they hire all these liberals or Democrats, lefties, on their shows? So I don't watch those shows. I've already given up so many of them. But I do like those two. But here's another thing, and I also learned a new word. It's called Chiron. Everybody know what a chyron is? It's spelled, it was hard for me to find it because I didn't know how it was spelled. It's spelled C-H-Y-R-O-N. So a chyron is a caption superimposed, this is a dictionary definition, a caption superimposed over usually the lower part of a video image, as during a news broadcast. So when you see the writing at the bottom of a news show, that scrolls, that's a chyron. C-H-Y-R-O-N. New word. So I'm like watching Laura Ingraham, and there's this thing about, the melting of the ice, and there's a journal of cryology or some bullshit. Some, and I'm like, oh man, why? It's just like spreading the fear, like sea levels are gonna rise. Well, I'm sorry, there's been a slow increase in the sea level. It has not accelerated. This has happened since the end of the last ice age. We're in an interglacial right now. It's not a problem, okay? These slow secular climbs are not a problem. We're talking very little. So I thought, what is Fox News doing this for? Spreading the fear. So I would not watch Fox News that much. It's changed, which to me is really kind of dumb. Do they really think that people on the left are going to go to Fox News and watch it? Really? Why would they? They've already heard for years and years, Fox News, don't watch Fox News. Fox News is not that great. But they're not gonna hassle Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham because they have good ratings. I don't really like Sean Hannity that much. He was good during the whole impeachment and looking into Obamagate, if you want to call it that, all the horrible things that they did with Michael Flynn and FISA abuse. He was very good on that. But when he kept talking about, I don't care if we have to wear masks as long as we can open up, I just I can't listen to that. Can't listen to it. Because I actually do think the masks are critical. This is changing our culture. This is changing who we are. We are not communist China, because something happens to people when you've got that mask on. It's taking away some of your humanity. It's giving you a false sense of security. It's saying, I'm not okay being out and about in the world, that there's all these bad things out there, there's these germs. It's just not a good message. We need to breathe oxygen. These are the people, during the Obama administration, they actually had a medical conference about how climate change, they made CO2 like it's a pollutant. It was just, CO2 is not a pollutant, as you know. But they did that, and I was just like, what? So it got we're gonna have clean air, clean technology. It just is reducing CO2. It made no sense. And now, these are the same people wearing masks, so they're breathing more CO2. They're the same people who stay indoors, don't get enough fresh air. You're getting more CO2, you're not getting enough oxygen. I personally am bothered when I see somebody driving with a mask on. They're not getting enough oxygen to their brain. So that's just idiotic. And I refuse. People are getting used to it. That's the thing that bothers me. At the end of it, the tail end of this so-called pandemic, when it's really going away, you have more people wearing masks. It's like they're used to it. And they think it's important, at least in this area. But I'm not wearing it. And I'm pulling it below my nose when I go in the grocery store. That's it. So I'm convinced there's only one place where institutional racism exists, and that's in these institutions, like colleges. Why would you have a vice president of diversity? You hire a person that's vice president of diversity. That means vice president of getting more people based on their race into this institution. That's institutional racism. It's not vice president of political diversity. There's none of that. And have you ever thought about professional sports? Like football, basketball? They're mostly blacks. And nobody ever cared about that because they just want the best person. At this point, it's like whoever's best at the sport. They don't say, so why aren't white people or Asian people or some other group saying, well, wait a minute, we don't have enough representation of this or that on the sports team. No, because you want to get the best person, period. And fans don't care. They just celebrate who's ever the best. And that's the way it should be. So stop with it. Whenever you hear the word diversity, it's a bad thing. Oh, let me say another thing. I happened to catch on One American News, there was a thing with the Wisconsin sheriff about Kenosha with the riots. And I was kind of horrified listening, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they kept talking about the importance of having, peaceful protests. And I mean, what is going on there? Okay? I'm done with these protests. Okay? If you go to a protest now, when there's been all this rioting and looting, stop it. Okay? I have no sympathy. I'm not going to say all the requisite things about, oh, but we support peaceful protests. No, we don't. Okay? We don't. Not in these cities. Now, at the Washington Monument, if they wanted to have a protest, that was fine. Because I don't think anything happened when they did that. They just want to give up and get speeches. But not in these cities when they turn into riots. But I just listened to the sheriff, and I was just kind of disgusted listening to him. And that's why they got that kid, that Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, he's got to get off. He was attacked, and he was trying to protect property there anyway. But they just, because they didn't want more riots. So they charged him with all these crimes. It's like, stop it. We gotta quit placating these people. Okay, let me say a few more words. I was thinking about, let's say 10 years ago, if I would have listened to the RNC, I would have thought a little bit too much religion for my taste, because there was a lot of religion. But, and also it was Christianity. There wasn't any, at least what I saw, I didn't see anything about the Jewish religion, and we do have a Judeo-Christian heritage in this country. So it would have been too much for me, but I understand it now because we needed to do that because the left and the Democrats have tried to remove it. Okay, that people don't go to church, people don't get to talk about their religion and their faith and what it means to them. And so this is what you get, folks. You people on the left that, want to keep religion out of the public sphere a little bit, well, too bad, okay? There's a backlash. So you've got more people, okay, that are turning to the Republican Party and to the right who say, no, you can't do that. So I kind of feel like it was needed. So it didn't bother me. I thought it was appropriate given what's been done to religion and people's faith in this country lately. And then there was one more thing I wanted to mention. As I've thought about now that I'm pro-life instead of pro-choice, because I had another thought about that. And actually it came from watching about the life of Janis Joplin. And she died of a drug overdose in October of 1970. I watched this program on Reels. That's Reelz. And it's called Autopsy. I love watching it for some reason. It's about these celebrities and they look at how they died and what happened. It's very well done. So I was just watching one on Janis Joplin. And here's the interesting thing for me personally. She got an abortion in 1968. She went to Mexico because it wasn't really legal. But she was depressed about it. Now see, when I was growing up and thinking, women's rights and everything and being pro-choice, I always figured that, hey, a woman really wants an abortion. She should have the right to a legal, safe medical procedure. But what struck me about this was that why did she have the abortion? What were the societal pressures that said you cannot have this child? Because it hurt her to do it. And I noticed one of the things that's slightly different about me with this, I think it's horrible, like what happens to the baby, and most of the people who talk about being pro-life talk about what happens to the baby. And I personally, it's really more about what happens to the people who do it. Because I think the fetus's brain is not developed enough to even have a sense or knowing what's happened. But this is so wrong on a personal level to do this. It's hurtful to everybody concerned. And of course it's hurtful for the baby. But my main concern is still the same concern I had before. What does it do to the people who are doing this abortion? Abby Johnson, I think was her name. She spoke about working at Planned Parenthood and actually seeing an abortion take place. It's horrific. So not only for the woman who has the abortion, now there are so many options for women who are pregnant. It doesn't ruin everything if you have a baby. Or to the person, but to the people doing these abortions, what do they have to shut off? I was impressed that Abby Johnson, I hope that's her last name, Johnson. She said in her organization they've had, I think, something like 60 former abortionists that have transitioned to become pro-life. She's helping them because it hurts their soul. It hurts, this is so wrong. It's wrong. And that is what bothers me the most. To even think that people can tear apart little babies. But my main concern is the people who see this, who have this done, and what it does to them. So that's how I feel, and I feel bad for Janis Joplin. And by the way, she OD'd because she got the wrong heroin. That was interesting to me because I always sort of thought it was a little bit of a self-induced, if you will. But she did have a problem with heroin. Very talented woman. Okay. I think that's it for today. And I want to thank you all. I couldn't get to all the comments. And I got great comments last time. I got to some of them. But one of the things that happens is when some of the people, I actually am so intrigued that I look you up, I Google you, and I think about it, and it's like, oh my gosh, the week is gone, and I haven't gotten to them. So just because I didn't answer, if I just put a like, I read them all, and some of them are just so amazing. So let me just mention, like Jake Honeycutt, left me a really nice one. And it's like, I want to think about how do you answer something like that? It's just a beautiful comment. And then Benjamin Roulette, I actually Googled you, okay, read your LinkedIn page, so now I know all about you. Because it's like, it just writes these great comments. And then I had Melissa Thorson. Okay, She and I had a little bit of back and forth, and she lives in Jackson, Mississippi, and I ended up reading her blogs, and I saw her picture. She's a beautiful woman. It's like, I just feel like I have a lot of friends here, okay? I could just keep going back and forth. It's, and so if I didn't get to you, doesn't mean I didn't. I think about what you wrote, and I'm very appreciative. Anyway, I've talked plenty today, and we're gonna win this, people.